Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What kind of slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you with Toadstool Sports for Friday, February 27th. We're getting close to March Madness, man. We had a 3-1 night on the show last night. Easy outright win with Charleston Southern. That line was up to 7, but it didn't even matter because they won the game outright. So that was a nice one. Drexel in a close game did get it done. It seemed like it was trending in the correct direction. I mean, it was a slow defensive game, which is what you want with Drexel. So it was at their pace. They were able to get it done, although it was close. It was tied in the final minute of the game probably, but they were able to get it done. I think they won by 5, but I think probably on a couple of intentional fouls at the end. And then UC Riverside covered the 11.5, although the line was down to 10.5 at a lot of spots, and it landed 11, which is absolutely ridiculous. So my 11.5 did hit. Dude, they should have covered every number. It was like a wire-to-wire cover for Riverside. They were down 7 with like 15 seconds left, and you usually do not intentionally foul anymore when you're down 7+ because it's 3 possessions. Like, you're not going to be able to come back at that point. I don't know how they wound up losing that game by 11. It makes no sense. Yeah, I think it was basically a wire-to-wire cover. And then my least favorite of my plays yesterday, the Bulls. I shouldn't have even added it. That sucked. The Bulls faded later in the game. I mean, they weren't completely out of position to maybe potentially get that cover still, but didn't happen. We're going to move on to today. I will have one play in each sport, so we will be jumping back into the NHL today. I'm going to have one college basketball play and one NBA play. I think my college basketball play is probably the most obvious what it's going to be already if you know how I do things. But let's get into it, man. College basketball, we do have Miami, Ohio getting a spotlight game at 6 p.m. on CBS Sports. Number 21, Miami, Ohio, at Western Michigan. Of course, Miami, Ohio is the way better team here. Western Michigan is not good. But Miami, Ohio did already beat Western Michigan by 11 at home. So there's the chance that they don't take them as seriously, although my guess is they didn't cover the number there because they're about an 11-point favorite tonight. Yeah, they were 14.5 in that one. But even so, you beat a team by double digits, you may not take them seriously the next time. It's a second straight road game, third road game in 4 games for Miami, Ohio here. It is their 6th road game in 8 games as well. So I think I said, did I say days? I meant games, but yes. 6 road games in the last 8 games. Could be a little bit of a tricky spot for them. However, it's not a good spot for Western Michigan, even though you got to think, well, they'll probably get up for a home game. They get a televised game against Miami, Ohio. I agree that should keep them focused, but keep in mind they are coming off an upset of Bowling Green. That was a big double-digit upset for Western Michigan on the road. I think they caught Bowling Green after they played Miami, Ohio. So I don't want anything to do with the game. Miami, Ohio did drop from 12.5 to 11.5. Miami, Ohio is all the hype, so you got to think, well, If they're 14.5 at home, 11.5 does seem a little bit like a big number on the road. I mean, I know you got to adjust the numbers a little bit and whatever, but probably the line value is on the Western Michigan side. I guess I'd lean that way, but I don't want to do that. I don't want anything to do with that, with the fact that they're coming off an upset themselves. So I don't really want to do anything with that. Kyle, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. Yale at Cornell gets a TV game on ESPNU. These are two of the better teams in the Ivy at the very least, like probably two of the top three in the Ivy. I don't believe Penn is actually that good. I think it's Yale, Harvard, Cornell are clearly the top three. Yale is coming off beating Penn, but they barely got by them. I think Yale probably were double-digit favorites in that game or close to it at home. 9.5, yeah. So Yale is coming off a non-covering win. They are continuing their momentum here, but they did already beat Cornell in absurd fashion at Yale. They beat them 102-68. So that is a major, kind of outlier type of result there, man. If you beat a team by 40 points the first time, and that team is actually reasonably competitive with you, I think you might take them for granted the next game. So I do think that Cornell is probably the way to look, just because that last result was so insane. Cornell is staying at home, and they just took a pretty ugly loss to Harvard, although I know Harvard is a good team as far as the Ivy is concerned, but still, I would have to lean to Cornell here. It looks way too easy when you see that Yale won by almost 40 points the first time, and now they're laying 4, down from 4.5. I would lean to Cornell in this one, plus the points, but it's not something I really want to get involved in, especially with Yale off the non-covering win like that. But Cornell did just lose by like 19 at home to Harvard, so they might be in more of a bounce-back spot there. Yes, the winner of the Ivy makes the tournament. It's not the regular season winner anymore, though. The Ivy League added a 4-team tournament. I don't know, probably I would say within the last 20 years or so. I don't know how long they've had their conference tournament, but they do have one. They don't give the tournament bid to the regular season winner anymore. The top 4 teams in the Ivy play a tournament to determine it. So it is not determined yet that it will be Yale, although Yale is only one game ahead of Harvard in the standings as well. But yeah, it'll be Yale, Harvard, Cornell, I would imagine, and then it would be interesting if Dartmouth gets into the tournament. Maybe they'll be able to overtake Penn. I don't know. But Dartmouth, they haven't been to the tournament. Like, they have not been to the NCAA tournament probably since, like, the 1950s. So it would be interesting if Dartmouth gets into the Ivy tournament. But they're not going to win it. But, it would be interesting if they just have that chance, just as a little bit of a story there. Because they're having, a season that's at least not horrible. All right, Quinnipiac at Niagara is a little bit of an interesting game because these teams that are having to travel from, like, New England all the way over to Buffalo, it's like, how much do they really want to do that, man? Although I'm going to say that with Merrimack when I talk about them in a little while, because Merrimack has nothing left to play for in the MAAC. They're already the 1 seed. Quinnipiac is still playing for seeding, so they still might show up because they still have a chance to get the 2 seed, I think. They got, 2 games remaining, but... Well, and I should say, and also, they only beat Niagara by 1 the last time they played them at home. So Quinnipiac almost lost as a pretty big favorite at home. So that might mean that they will take Niagara seriously here. But it is a bit of a weird travel spot going out to Buffalo, although I think these teams do have to make this trip once a year. But kind of at the end of the year, it's a little weird. Although Quinnipiac is also coming off an ugly loss at home to Fairfield. In-state rival, I guess, Fairfield, in-state brother, little brother to them maybe. So Quinnipiac's coming off a losing game as a favorite. So there are a couple of reasons to maybe look towards Quinnipiac here, man, because I think they are still going to want to give it an effort here. They barely beat Niagara before. They're coming off a loss at home that wasn't very good. So I don't really want to fade them, even though it is kind of a weird travel spot here. Niagara does have one more game remaining against Merrimack. Now, Niagara is not making the MAAC tournament, so this is another thing we got to look at the end of the season is how many of these teams are eliminated from the conference tournaments. Like, these teams are not going to play anymore after the regular season. And that is the case in the MAAC. The last 3 teams don't make the conference tournament, and it's already decided. So Canisius, Niagara, and Ryder are all eliminated from the MAAC tournament. So their final games will be these regular season games. So that's something to keep in mind, where a team might like want to show up with a big effort in what they know is going to be their absolute last game of the season, you know. So that's something to keep in mind, whereas they are probably going to be playing a team that has more pressure on them, and that team, you know, needs to, you know, that team might be jockeying for positioning. Or when it's Merrimack, Merrimack has nothing to play for at all. So, because Merrimack's already looking ahead to the conference tournament. So, you know, you got to keep these situations in mind here at the end of the regular season. And yes, there will be no Buffalo representation in the MAAC tournament with both of those teams being out of it. But yeah, in this Niagara-Quinnipiac game, I actually probably lean towards laying it with Quinnipiac. They're down from 8.5 to 8, but I think the spot is actually a little bit better for them, even though it is an odd travel spot. All right, best bet is the next game, which you might have already figured. We're going to go with George Washington against Dayton on ESPN2, so you get a TV college basketball game from me here at 7 p.m. We're going to lay it. They're 3.5 right now, and the public, if they want involvement in this game, they're going to look at this, and there's no way they're going to lay points here, right? They're going to think, oh, my God, Dayton. Well, Dayton just smashed St. Louis, so that's pretty much the main reason why I want to fade them here, which I'll get to that in a minute. But people are going to look at that fact and see that Dayton has the better record overall and in conference. And why would the public want to lay points against them? You know what I mean? It looks so easy to take them. Oh, my God, I'm getting points with the better team. Well, what the odds makers are telling you is they're not really the better team, that these teams are close to each other. Ken Baum does bear that out. He has these teams fairly close. He's got George Washington actually 3 ranking spots higher than Dayton. George Washington is Ken Baum's absolute unluckiest team in the entire country. And by the way, I apologize for not talking about Liberty yesterday, because that was a correct lean for me, and I completely forgot to talk about the game. Liberty had lost their first game in conference play. It was their first loss, so they had a long win streak disrupted. You know, I talk about that when a team takes their first conference loss. It's been almost every single time that team has lost the next game, except when I tried to fade St. Louis after it happened to them. But yes, Liberty was playing all these close games too, so I thought that was going to be a hangover, and indeed it was. They lost outright last night to Kennesaw, but the reason this reminded me of that was that Liberty is Ken Baum's #1 luckiest team in the entire country, so if they make the NCAA tournament, they're going to be a team probably that you're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking to fade them, and that's if they even are able to make it through the Conference USA tournament, which is certainly not a definite. But here, George Washington, we're going to play on them because they have underperformed big time. They're the unluckiest team in the country, according to Ken Baum, so that's really something. Now, they do play at a fast tempo, so there is a bit of a contrast of styles here where George Washington has the better offense out of these two teams, which does mean Dayton does have the better defense, and usually I do like the better defense getting points, and that is what Dayton is here. But in this spot, I'm going to go with George Washington to control the pace, score, and speed this game up, man, because they're going to want to speed it up. Dayton's probably going to want to slow the game down a bit, even though they're kind of a mid-tempo team this year. But I think the home team might be able to control the pace in a game like this. And hosting the game at home, you know, on a Friday night, I think is kind of a big deal for GW, because I don't think they get to host huge games like this on the ESPN networks that often. So I think it will be a big deal for them. I think they will come out with some fire. Yes, these two teams are both playing for seeding in the A10 conference tournament, but seeding only means so much, man. You know, Dayton's not going to get the 1 seed at this point. So they're pretty much... They are playing for a first-round bye, I believe. I think the top 4 teams do get a first-round bye. But with 3 games remaining, and look at the setup for them, man. Like I said, they just beat St. Louis by 15. That was a monster game for Dayton at home. I think that was a TV game for them, too. Huge, huge win for them. It was actually it was not. It was on ESPN Plus. I did have it on for a little while, but yeah, monster win for Dayton. And Dayton, by the way, they already beat George Washington earlier in the season in Dayton by 5. So this is a little bit of a revenge angle for GW here. If you look at what happened in this game, Dayton was a 2.5-point favorite. So the odds makers were kind of telling you that GW is a slightly better team even back then. The one thing to really look at in the box score is GW out-rebounded Dayton in the game. So George Washington actually beat Dayton in the most predictive metric, which is rebounding. So GW actually played better than Dayton, debatably, and they led for a higher percentage of the game. They led for more than half of the game, so they actually had the upper hand in that game at Dayton, more than you would think. And then if you look at what happened statistically otherwise, GW was minus 11 in turnovers. So at home, I don't expect that to be the case again, even though they're going up against a good defense. And I know GW has kind of a frenetic offense, but minus 11 in turnovers, that definitely skewed the game against them. That's a bit of an outlier. And Dayton went to the free throw line 30 times and hit 90% of their free throws. GW only went 20 times and hit 60%. So the free throws were a bit of an outlier in that game too, and I don't really expect that to continue into this game either. So there are definitely signs that this game should be a lot different than this first game was, man. Like, there are definitely some outliers to see in this box score. Like, you're not going to get a team shooting 90% from the free throw line in most games. Probably the free throw disparity won't be as big in how many each team gets, or at least it won't be that big against GW when they're the home team, I wouldn't imagine. And GW is probably not going to be as bad as 60% from the free throw line either. So actually a lot of discrepancies to look at there. GW is at minus 3.5 here. That's what we're going with. We're taking George Washington. It is not their final home game, but they are coming back home off a nice, easy bounce-back win over LaSalle. I know they looked good in that game. They put up over 100 points, but we're still going to do this here, man. The spot dictates it. It's a horrible letdown spot for Dayton. A lot going into this one, man. Numbers being a little bit misleading. A second matchup that I think is beneficial to us here as well, like that type of spot. So I think GW will be able to make the adjustments in that second matchup there. All right. Oh, my neck. Ryder at Iona. I thought this was Ryder's last game. One of these teams is playing their last regular season game. It might be Sacred Heart, but Sacred Heart is going to make the conference tournament, so they're not playing their absolute last game. But, you know, I don't even know if there was anything for me to really talk about in this game. I thought it was Ryder's last game, but it isn't. Ryder did just win their last home game against Niagara, which did end a 5-game losing streak for them, so maybe they will have momentum coming into this. Iona is coming off a pretty big game against Merrimack, where they played hard. They only lost by 2, so they are coming off some big games. They played St. Peter's the game before that. They lost to Ryder once, so it's interesting. So Iona might actually still take Ryder seriously because Ryder actually beat them the other time they played them, so that is kind of an interesting part of the handicap. And it is Iona's last home game, so there are some positives for Iona here. They're up from 11.5 to 12, though. But I don't know, man. I do kind of lean towards taking the points with Ryder in that one, though. Even though usually if the better team lost the first matchup, they're going to show up in the next game. But, you know, Iona's still playing for seeding or whatever. Ryder's not really playing for a whole lot other than trying to get some wins at the end of the season. I think as far as what these teams did in their last games, I think the spot does set up better for Ryder in that one, but it's a tough read. All right. What are the games that I want to talk about here? I mean, I did mention that Sacred Heart is playing their last regular season game, but it is not their final game because they will play in the MAAC tournament. So I don't know how big that game will be for them, although for Sacred Heart, just looking at that real quick, I guess. Yeah, it's weird that it's the last game. It is their last home game. They are on a 2-game losing streak, but they did just play a big game against Marist the game before that, and they only lost by 2 to a superior team to them. So sometimes that will take a lot out of you, you know, and you won't have that much left. They did beat Mount St. Mary's on the road already, by the way. So Sacred Heart is coming off a big game, and it's kind of a revenge spot for Mount St. Mary's where Sacred Heart might not take them as seriously. So, maybe Sacred Heart's going to start looking ahead to the conference tournament. The line in that one did go up from 2 to 3, but I would probably lean towards Mount St. Mary's in that one. Not a strong opinion at all. Merrimack, like I said, there's no way that I would lay the points with Merrimack here because they have nothing to play for. They already wrapped up the MAAC 1 seed. They're looking ahead to the conference tournament already. Do you really think they're going to want to go out to Buffalo and really put in an effort here against two teams that are not making the MAAC tournament? So I think where it really might come to a head is the second game against Niagara, where it's going to be Niagara's literal last game of the season at home, and Merrimack will have absolutely nothing to play for. That's a game where you really might want to consider Niagara in that one, depending on what happens tonight, too. But, yeah, I don't think Merrimack's going to give you that much of an effort here in this one. I don't think these teams have played this year, but I see no reason at all why Merrimack should be laying double digits on the road here. Canisius just lost by 20-plus on the road to Mount St. Mary's. Now they're back home. They have an opportunity to play the 1 seed in the conference and actually put up a decent effort here. So I think Canisius will actually get up for this game. Merrimack down from 10 to 9.5. Like I said, I don't see how you could justify having the line like that when Merrimack has literally nothing to play for here. And they're traveling out to Buffalo. It makes no sense. And Merrimack, by the way, they're new to this conference. So they've never made this trip before, I don't think. The Buffalo trip in the MAAC, which is not a fun thing to do, even though both these teams are bad. Yeah, the only way I could play this game is to take the points with Canisius. The total is pretty low as well at 130. So points probably going to be at a premium in that one too. Yeah. That one is close to being a play for me, to be honest. It just makes no sense that the line would be like that. Merrimack is kind of just rolling right now. They did just barely get by Iona, though. But I think Merrimack is starting to pack it in. But that game was a 2-overtime game, man. So, yeah, you could argue that, well, they barely got by as a huge favorite. Well, as a 6.5-point favorite. And a lot of times teams will bounce back from that. But in this case, I think they're just done for the regular season, man. Like, no reason for them to put in a ton of effort here. They got to get ready for the tournament. I mean, they don't want to go completely rusty, so maybe they'll give you like half a game of effort or something here. But again, even at the beginning of the game, it might be tough for them because they're coming off a double OT game. So, and that does mean that Iona also is, by the way. So that's another reason to fade Iona because they're coming off taking Merrimack to double overtime as a big underdog there. So that's another reason to lean towards Ryder in that one. Okay. For some of the rest of these games here, we do have a lot going on in the Sun Belt here, where I thought it was a 7-way tie for first place in the Sun Belt when I talked about bracketology last time. Now, I apologize. I forgot to mention South Alabama is one of those teams tied at the top of the conference. They're a pretty solid team in the Sun Belt. But I was wrong about the 7-way tie. It's 4 teams tied at the top and 3 teams tied 1 game behind them. So it's a 7-way race for the 1 seed still, though. Troy is one of those teams. Troy's going to be a big favorite here. But the interesting thing about this, normally it would not be interesting that they're playing UL Monroe, okay? But here's the interesting thing about this game. 2 things. 1, UL Monroe almost beat Troy at home 3 games ago. So Troy might take them seriously for that reason because Troy knows they almost lost to them. Now, the other thing is UL Monroe has nothing to play for here. Even though this is their last regular season game, every team in the Sun Belt makes the conference tournament, and UL Monroe already is guaranteed the 14 seed in the tournament. None of the other seeds have been clinched by any of the teams, so it's hilarious that UL Monroe is that bad, that they're 5 games behind their nearest competitor in the conference. And actually, Old Dominion and Georgia State actually aren't even that bad. I think Louisiana's worse than they are. So interesting there that UL Monroe has nothing to play for, basically, other than the fact that, yeah, maybe they'll get up for a game against one of the top teams, Troy, like they did last time. But Troy has something to play for because they're vying for the 1 seed. UL Monroe is already locked into the bottom seed here. And Troy might take them seriously after almost losing to them a couple games ago. Because, I think Troy might have been looking ahead to South Alabama. It was a 3rd road game in a row for them. Wasn't the easiest spot. But now this sets up way better for Troy because it is senior day for them, senior night. It is their final home game, so they might get up a little bit extra for that reason. They just won easily against Louisiana. I know Yoel Monroe's on a losing skid, and they probably want to at least, I guess, maybe try to win a game. Yeah, they did just lose by 30 plus, so I'm not going to say you're not going to get an effort out of them here, but I would lean to Troy in this one, man. Troy does have reasons to show up here. They're a 19-point favorite there, so for all the reasons that I stated, I feel like I repeat myself too much. It makes the show longer, man. But yeah, I would probably lay it with Troy if I was going to do anything with that game. The big game of the night on Fox at 8 p.m. is in the Big Ten. Number 3, Michigan at number 10, Illinois. This is a huge game, dude. It's an interesting game. These teams are both projected to be top 2 seeds in the tournament. Michigan is very close to wrapping up the Big Ten regular season title. In fact, I believe they would clinch it with a win. Illinois is one of the teams that does have the potential to tie Michigan. They would have to win tonight for that to even be a possibility. Michigan's not going to lose out, though, man. There's no way. But is there the potential they lose this game? Maybe. Actually, you know what? I guess it's theoretically possible that Michigan loses out. Highly unlikely, but they do have road games here against Illinois, Iowa, and then they finish against Michigan State, who, as we saw last night, Michigan State does have the ability to pretty much beat anybody on any given night. So, yeah, there's a lot to think about in this game, man. But I think the fact that Michigan knows, hey, if we win, we clinch the Big Ten, I think that kind of puts some pressure on you, you know what I mean? Like, I think that makes you a little bit overvalued. So, I don't like that aspect of this for Michigan. Michigan is coming off a lackluster game against Minnesota. I gave you guys Minnesota as a play in that one. Minnesota definitely covered. Michigan only won by 10 as 22.5-point favorites. They were coming off that huge game against Duke. 2 huge games against Purdue and Duke, and they had this Illinois game on deck. So that was a major sandwich spot. Plus, it was a hangover spot after the Duke game and loss of a long win streak. So I think you knew you weren't going to get that great an effort out of Michigan there. So maybe you could debate that Michigan will bounce back and give you a better effort here. But this is also a monster game for Illinois. They're coming off a horrible game against UCLA, where Illinois had that game put away, man. They were winning that game by 20-plus early, and they wind up losing the game. Now, the problem for Illinois is they're having to travel across time zones. They're traveling back from the Pacific Coast, and they had to play multiple overtimes in that game. But I guess the good thing for Illinois is they haven't played since Saturday, so they have extra rest after the double overtime. Michigan played in the middle of the week on Tuesday, so there is more rest on the side of Illinois. So what do we do with this game? Well, I mean, I'm not touching the game. Michigan up from 1 to 2 here, 69% of tickets, only 66% of the cash. Wow, it's a tough call, man. Michigan is definitely the better defense, so I usually do like the better defense in like a pick the winner type of scenario. Michigan's the number 2 defense in the country, according to KenPom. Illinois, not good on defense, but they are the number 1 offense, according to KenPom. Now, Illinois plays slow. That's the other thing to keep in mind. Very, very strange that the offensive team in the matchup is actually going to be the team trying to slow the game down. And you're used to Illinois being like a fast-paced team in recent years, and they still have the same coach, Underwood, but maybe he adapts to what his personnel looks like and whatever. We have a slow-paced Illinois team this year, and maybe they will slow it down and frustrate Michigan in this one. I think I would lean with the market in this one and lean towards taking the points with Illinois, but it's a tough call there. Akron at Kent State gets ESPNU billing at 8 p.m. Pretty good game, man, in the MAAC conference here. Akron is still alive for the 1 seed in the MAAC, but, of course, their one loss was to Miami, Ohio. And, of course, we know Miami, Ohio hasn't lost, and they may very well go undefeated for the rest of the regular season. This is definitely Akron's most difficult game remaining, and the setup is not that easy as they're playing a 5th road game in 7 games. That's not easy to do, man. So Akron's traveling a lot, at least with Kent State, they're staying within the state of Ohio for this. So it's a familiar travel spot for them. It is a big rivalry game. Akron already won the first meeting in Akron by 17, which might mean that Kent will be the team to make the adjustments here. Akron playing a lot of road games here, coming off an easy double-digit win over Buffalo. Kent State is coming off a bad performance where they barely got by Central Michigan as a big favorite, but that was an ugly spot for Kent State, man. I talked about that game, and I did have some reservations. I leaned to Central Michigan, but one of my reservations was Kent State had actually lost to Central Michigan earlier in the year, so I thought maybe they'll take them seriously, but the problem was Kent State had just played Bowling Green on the road, which is a pretty big game, and they had this huge game against Akron on TV, on deck, so it was still a pretty bad spot for Kent State. They barely got through, but I talk about this when a big favorite barely gets by an inferior team. A lot of times it's because they're looking ahead, which I think they were. So I think you're going to get a much better effort out of Kent after that bad game. So I do lean to Kent State in this game. Akron down from 4.5 to 4 here. 71% of tickets, only 58% of the cash on them. I would take the points with Kent. I know Akron, I keep saying they're the best team in that conference. I still think they are. With Miami, Ohio second, but I think Kent State is probably the third best team in the conference, although their defense does leave something to be desired. App State and Texas State is actually the only game in the Sun Belt tonight between two teams that are in that 7-team mix. You'd think there'd be more games involving those two teams, involving those 7 teams tonight playing each other, but there's only one. As far as I could see, it's this game, App State against, who did I say? Oh, yeah, Texas State. So Texas State is one game behind them. I believe they did not play this season, so this is the first meeting between these two teams, the only meeting. Now, it's App State's regular season finale. They did just beat Georgia Southern in their home finale. Georgia Southern, not a great team, though. Texas State is coming off a really ugly loss to Louisiana. Now, the problem for Texas State, though, is that did break a 7-game win streak for them. They were on fire, dude. And then I think they were in a letdown spot after a nice win over South Alabama with App State on deck. I think I might have talked about that game. I leaned to Louisiana there. Second straight road game, too. So it was a bad spot for Texas State there, and they lost the game. Now, when a team loses a win streak, a lot of times it will hang them over, but you got to think Texas State is going to get up for this game, man. It's senior night. It's their final home game. They're playing against one of the teams that's tied in first place. They got a chance to pull into a tie with them here, and they would have the tiebreaker, too, so they'd pull ahead of App State if they got the win here, because I think the tiebreaker would be the head-to-head matchup, and this is the only one. The money is coming in on Texas State. I do agree with that side, even though I worry a little bit about the loss of win streak hangover, but I think the circumstances kind of mitigate that. Texas State has flipped from a 1-point dog to a pick 'em. 75% of tickets, 89% of the cash on them. I agree with that move in that one. I lean to Texas State there as well. It would be a money line play. And Coastal is at James Madison in that conference. That's a game between Coastal is one of the teams that's tied 1 game behind the lead in the conference, and James Madison is only 1 game behind that. So this Sun Belt conference is insane, dude. Like, the entire conference is within 5 games of each other, except for UL Monroe. James Madison's on a 6-game win streak. They've been playing good basketball. This is their final home game as well, so and final game. So they might show up a little bit extra for that, for senior night, whatever. They already beat Coastal on the road, though, so it is a road revenge angle for Coastal here. So we'll see if that comes into play. As far as Coastal is concerned, they only beat them by 2 on the road, though, so they might not have covered because James Madison, well, they're 6.5-point favorite here, so they're probably a slight underdog at Coastal, probably, but I don't know. That was only a few games ago. They were 1.5-point favorites, so they did cover in that one. Coastal, this is their final regular season game as well. They're coming up beating Georgia State, which is not an impressive win. And then who did James Madison just beat? I don't even remember. Oh, yeah, Georgia Southern. All right, so, yeah, and this game, I don't know what to do with this game. It's just kind of interesting that JMU has worked their way up to within 2 games of the conference lead here, even though they're in 8th place. Really, really insane things going on in the Sun Belt. And and it's all for one team to get like a 14 or a 15 seed. James Madison's a 6-point favorite in this game for what it's worth. You know, I don't think Coastal is that good, but and they're not the better team here, but I don't know. I probably lean their way a little bit in the road revenge angle, but I don't really want to fade a team in their conference final either, man. So a lot of interesting stuff going on. Then, you know, we have Louisiana at Arkansas State in the Sun Belt. As I said, Louisiana had pulled off that upset over Texas State, but they actually played again after that and lost to Troy. Now they're playing an Arkansas State team that just beat them the game before the Texas State game. So Arkansas State won at Louisiana already. So maybe a little bit of a road revenge angle for Louisiana here. Arkansas State does have something to play for, though, because they're trying to get into the mix for the 1 seed discussion here. I don't know if they could actually get it, depending on the tiebreakers. I don't know who has what tiebreaker in the Sun Belt. It's impossible to keep track of it. Arkansas State is playing their final home game, though, and staying at home, coming off a performance where, yeah, they didn't do that well against Southern Miss in their last game. They're a 15-point favorite here in this one. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to say about this game, even though I think Arkansas State might be the best team in this conference. I probably wouldn't lay 15 with them, though. You know, I mean, like these teams that you know they're trying to get the 1 seed and whatever in the conference, you know they're probably going to be a little bit overvalued. So probably I'd lean towards the road revenge angle there. Georgia Southern is at Marshall on ESPN2. They get a TV game. Georgia Southern, I don't think is as good as their record makes them look, although, again, they haven't been playing like it recently anyway. They've lost 6 of their last 7 after I told you they're not as good as their record looks. Maybe they'll try to get something going here, but it is a 4th road game in a row, which is not going to be that easy. And they already beat Marshall at home, so Marshall might make the adjustments here, man, because Marshall is clearly the better team here. The fact that they lost to Georgia Southern at home, and now they're playing their final home game. They're staying at home off an easy win over Old Dominion. Marshall is vying for the 1 seed here, so yeah, maybe they'll be a little bit overvalued for that reason, but I think the spot does set up better for Marshall here, man. Too many road games for Georgia Southern in a row here. Marshall probably a bit angry about losing to them earlier in the season and maybe having the adjustments to make here. Marshall did drop from 8 to 7, but I think if I was going to do anything with the game, I would probably lay it with Marshall. Me, you know, just analyzing sides here, man. And then we're going to have 4 NHL games to talk about, 5 NBA, and I have 1 play in each of them, and I'll be back in 1 second. All right, NHL, let's get into it, man. Whew. All right, first game up is Buffalo at Florida. I think at this point, every NHL team has played since the Olympic break now. Not entirely sure about that. Buffalo did beat New Jersey coming out of the break. Nice road win for them, 2-1. Now they have to travel down to Florida. They do have Tampa Bay on deck, who just beat them in Tampa in overtime on February 3rd. And by the way, Buffalo actually went into Florida and beat them the day before that in Florida. So this is a little bit of a quick-ish revenge spot for Florida, having lost at home to Buffalo earlier in the month. So Florida might have some adjustments to make here, man. It's a little bit of a weird travel spot for Buffalo to have to travel down here. Florida is staying at home. Florida just had an easy win. They're on a back-to-back, but remember that not all back-to-backs are made equal. And for Florida, they were coming out of the break. So that's their only game they played since the break was yesterday. So I'm not as worried about the back-to-back, although probably they will switch to Tarasov in net because they did use Bobrovsky last night. He is their better goalie. They won easily. They looked good, 5-1 against a not very good Toronto team. But I think I would still lean to Florida on this one, man, even though they are on the back-to-back. They're staying at home. They have a little bit of a quick revenge spot. And again, they hadn't played for quite a while before that game. So it's not like they're going to be like totally tired or anything just because they played yesterday, because we're not in the thick of the schedule at this point right now. Florida down from -125 to -114, but they are getting the money now, it looks like, with Buffalo being kind of a public side, believe it or not. 61% of the tickets, 52% of the cash, though, on Florida. The public they're kind of off of Florida now, man. Buffalo's having a good season. They have the better record, but yeah, even though the odds makers are actually even telling you basically that Buffalo's the better team here, but in this spot, I think Florida is the opinion that I would have. Vegas is at Washington. Vegas just beat LA a couple nights ago. Even though they'd beaten them going into the break, they also beat them coming out of the break. Now Vegas is traveling cross-country from LA to Washington. Kind of a weird spot for Vegas to have to adjust time zones like that. They're playing Washington, then they're playing Pittsburgh, I guess, so it's not just for one game. Washington just beat Philadelphia coming out of the break on Wednesday. They're staying at home. To me, I think the spot is better for Washington here just because of the travel. The money looks like it's all coming in on Vegas, but I don't really agree with it. Washington down from -115 to -112, 57% of tickets on them, 75% of the cash on Vegas. I think it might be numbers guys who are doing that because Vegas is the better team here, but I don't like how the travel spot sets up for them there, man. I mean, yeah, you could make the argument that, well, teams do well when they start a road trip. Usually, like, they have, like, some momentum, and maybe you consider this to be that for Vegas, but I don't know. It is a bit of a weird travel spot, though. Like, to me, it seems like it is. Although these West Coast teams going east to play a game, it's a lot easier for them to do that than for East Coast teams to have to go west and play a really late game on their biological clock. Like, for Vegas, they're just going to be playing a game that's biologically at, like, 4 in the afternoon for them. So that's nowhere near as bad because you still have energy at that time of the day. Dirty Sock, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. Next game up is going to be my play, and we are going to play Utah on the money line. We will play the Mammoth against Minnesota here. The public is probably going to be on Minnesota. I mean, they're going to see this record and think, well, I'm getting Minnesota as an underdog here. This looks crazy, right? Like, the odds makers are actually telling you Utah is the better team, at least in this spot they are. And it does have to do with the goaltender as well here, which I'll talk about as well. But yeah, for Minnesota, you know, I've been talking about how I don't think they're as good as their record looks. They play a lot of close games. They've had a lot more overtime games than Utah has. Utah just has a lot more games that have landed in regulation. Now, Minnesota, their record is good. Yes, that's true. The road record is actually good, and they don't play that many OT games on the road. At least when they do, it looks like they win them. But for Utah, they're good at home, though. Utah's 17-9-2 at home, so Utah has some really huge home road splits, whereas Minnesota's actually pretty good both at home and on the road. Utah is specifically significantly better at home, I believe. So we are getting Utah where they play better, I think, because they have, you know, an elevation edge here. But look at how this spot sets up, man. Minnesota just beat the Avalanche yesterday, so they're on a back-to-back, and I know, like I just said with Florida, the back-to-back isn't as bad because they hadn't played since before the break, but I thought that break might disrupt their momentum, and Minnesota came out and beat Colorado on the road anyway. That's a monster win, man, for Minnesota, and I think Minnesota might be in a pretty major letdown spot here. And the game wasn't exactly what it looked like. They had 2 empty net goals late in the game. Colorado actually outshot them, out-face-off them with 65.2% of the face-offs going Colorado's way, and the hits were even. Colorado with 11 more shots, although some of that was because they were behind. But statistically, this game, the final score is completely misleading, basically. If you look at what that game was statistically, Minnesota did not win that game, by a lot statistically. In fact, I think they lost the game statistically. So the game was not what it appeared to be. So I think Minnesota is going to be in a letdown spot, having to play a second straight night in elevation, coming off that monster win. And Minnesota used Gustafsson last night. So I told you I would talk about the goalies here. They will use Wallstedt in net here. And I believe they're 2-3 in Wallstedt's last 5 games. So that's not exactly the greatest for them. Gustafsson is their better goalie. So they will be using their lesser goalie tonight. Whereas Utah is staying at home. Yes, they did just play Colorado as well, but they lost at home, and that was on Wednesday. So Utah has a day off, and I think they're going to be using Vejmelka in net again, man, because he's their better goalie, and even though he played against Colorado on Wednesday, I think that's a good thing because, remember, they were coming out of the Olympic break, so I think it's better for them if they use Vejmelka again here, right, because he won't be rusty. So that's the other thing. If Vejmelka is in net, it looks like I think he is slated to be in net because he usually plays a bunch of games in a row. You want him after he has a game under his belt, so I think that's a big advantage to Utah tonight. If they have Vejmelka having a game under his belt already since the break, now he's used to it, he's back in rhythm again, whereas for Minnesota, that's not going to be the case because Wallstedt hasn't played since well before the break, so you're gonna get a potentially rusty goalie from Minnesota. They're going to be on a back-to-back off a monster game. Utah's staying at home. They lost to Colorado, like I said, even though, yes, that was a big game, but this game wasn't really close. I mean, they were down 3-1 in the third period. Yeah, they cut it to 3-2, I guess, so yeah. I guess you could make the argument they played fairly close there, but one thing that I do like to see is that Utah actually outplayed Colorado in the game. So if you look at the box scores, Minnesota got outplayed by Colorado even though they won. Utah outplayed Colorado and lost. I mean, look at this. They had more shots, although, yeah, that was because they were behind. They won almost 61% of the faceoffs in the game. And Colorado just wasn't even physical in the game. Utah out-physicaled them, had 10 more hits in the game, almost double the amount of hits. So very, very interesting. But, yes, we're going to take Utah for all those reasons, man. And, again, the public is not going to want to play Utah as a favorite here. They're going to think, why am I getting – how is it so easy that I'm getting the quote-unquote better team as an underdog here, right? But we're not going to fall into that. We have 55% of the tickets on Minnesota, 51% of the cash on Utah, who are at minus 135 here. Utah will be the play, money line. Zach, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. The Royals, are they playing in spring training? I don't know. Queens isn't playing, though. And then we have Winnipeg and Anaheim. Now, Winnipeg, as I talked about, Hellebuck, of course, is their goalie. And he was the goalie in the gold medal game for the U.S. He had a great game. So he could be potentially in a personal letdown spot. And this will be his first time playing since then because Winnipeg did not use him in their first game out of the break. They won anyway against Vancouver, although it was a very close call. They had Comrie in net, so now it will be Hellebuck. So the spot, I think, in this game actually does look okay for Winnipeg because they're coming off a bad game against probably the worst team in the NHL, Vancouver. They barely got by them, so that should focus Winnipeg here, although they are having to travel down to Anaheim. But I worry about Hellebuck, man, and what he's going to look like coming off that gold medal game, so I think that is a concern. For Anaheim, I don't like the spot that they're in, really, though, as they just beat Edmonton coming out of the break in a comeback. They were down 4-2 in the third period, and they came back and won 6-5. That was a monster win for Anaheim there. So I think they could be in a letdown spot here coming off of that game. Although, unfortunately, they don't have Colorado next. They have Calgary next. Because if they had Colorado next, I would be considering Winnipeg a little bit more strongly because it would be a sandwich spot. And I know Minnesota's not in a sandwich spot. But still, I like the Utah side there. Minnesota, by the way, I didn't mention who they're playing next. It's only St. Louis, but even so, I still like the Utah spot there. This one I'm going to stay away from because there's some conflicting factors here. I do lean to Winnipeg in this game slightly. Anaheim's the minus 125 favorite, 90% of the tickets and 98% of the cash on them. I think the public will kind of want Anaheim here. They are a good home team, so you don't usually want to fade them at home. Winnipeg is not very good on the road. The public is going to want Anaheim in general just because their record is way better, but the odds makers are kind of telling you that Anaheim is not that much better than Winnipeg. So I think it all kind of comes down to what Hellebuyck is going to be like coming off the gold medal game, you know. But maybe it's somewhat of a good thing because it means he won't be rusty. You know what I mean? So I don't know. We'll see. But it could still be a personal letdown spot for him. But if we were just looking at the scheduling spot, I think it does land in favor of Winnipeg. All right. And then we got some NBA. 5 NBA games tonight. There's an ESPN doubleheader where both games are actually good-ish. Cleveland at Detroit is the first game up. This is a big game, man. It'll be a potential Eastern Conference playoff preview of a sort here. Cleveland is coming off losing to Milwaukee. That was a bad loss for them. And I gave you guys Milwaukee in that game, and I gave it to you in the morning at +9, and it was at 2.5 when the game went off because Cleveland rested all their players because I think they were focusing ahead on this game. So I think that tells you that Cleveland, they pretty much just threw that game against Milwaukee. Like, they basically just, they passed on the game because you know this is what happens in the NBA. It's the Greg Popovich. They Popoviched it, and they rested their players. But I also think because they lost to a bad Bucks team that they're probably going to be in a bounce-back mode too. So I do like Cleveland in this one. You're going to get a full effort out of them here. That's why they rested their guys. Although Donovan Mitchell is listed as being out, but I don't really think so. Actually, I guess he's not playing. My mistake. So Mitchell, I guess, is actually legitimately injured. I thought these guys just rested. But that's, I guess, something to keep in mind that Mitchell is not playing in this game, which I guess kind of explains why Detroit is as big of a favorite as they are here. So Mitchell is going to be out. So that is one thing, I guess, to be concerned with for Cleveland. But the rest of their guys, like James Harden, I expect him to play. And then for Detroit, they have pretty much a full roster, except Stewart is still suspended from the brawl against Charlotte. But for Detroit, Detroit's coming off a win over Oklahoma City, man. So I think Detroit is in the worst spot here. You know, they kind of went all out in that game to beat Oklahoma City the other night, although they are staying at home. But they've had a rough schedule out of the break, man, after they had one easy game against Chicago, but look at the rest of their games out of the break. They already had to play the Knicks, San Antonio, Thunder, and Cleveland now. Very, very difficult schedule for Detroit here, man. And I think it might catch up to them a little bit. I actually lean Cleveland in this game. Pistons are down from 7 to 6 here. 59% of the tickets, 63% of the cash. I know it's no Mitchell, and I know Mitchell missed the last game too with Cleveland, which I guess you could have debated. That was the injured player theory spot, but I think the Cavs are going to give you a huge effort in this one. They're coming off the loss. They rested their other guys in that game. It was a bad loss. The Pistons are coming off a big performance and having to put in another effort like that and duplicate that and cover a large number here. Yeah, I'm going to lean to the Cavs in that one. You know, it wouldn't even shock me if they won the game outright, to be honest, even without Mitchell in that one. It's a pretty good Cavs team still. So those are my thoughts on that game. And the Cavs probably are going to step up their effort, you know, because it's a big game against Detroit, and they probably know they have to put in. The injured player spot might actually happen in this game. Next up is my best bet. And I'm going to hope that my gauge is a little bit better than it was on the Celtics the last time I tried to fade them against Phoenix. And the Celtics still turned it around and won the game. But we're going to fade the Celtics here. And I think it's a bad spot for the Celtics. We're going to take the Brooklyn Nets. And hopefully the Nets whispering will continue here. The Nets are 18-point underdogs here. Now, first of all, these two teams have already played 3 times this year. And you want to take a guess how many of those games the Celtics won by 18 or more? The answer is 0. The Celtics are 0-3 at covering this number against Brooklyn this year. And I believe the Celtics are 1-2 against the spread in those games and what the spreads were in those games. They had one 14-point win at Brooklyn, I believe. They had, actually, let me look real quick. I know the Celtics, the last time they played, I know it was a double overtime game where they almost lost, and Brooklyn actually beat them the other time. Yeah, so the Celtics won at Brooklyn by 14. Then there was a zigzag spot right after that, and the Celtics lost at home by 8. Then at Brooklyn later on in January, in a spot that wasn't even really bad for the Celtics, Brooklyn took them to double overtime. Really, really crazy, man. So Brooklyn has played well against the Celtics. They haven't lost by more than 14 in any game. And in fact, in the 2 games that they didn't lose by double digits, one of the games went to double overtime, and Brooklyn won the other game. So Brooklyn has played well against them. The Celtics are in a bad spot. They're returning home from a road trip. They've been on the road since coming out of the All-Star break, and they had to go to the Pacific Coast. They won 3 games on the road trip. They had to go into Arizona. They won that game, even though I thought it was a bad spot. Then they lost to Denver in their last game, and I know they lost badly in the end of it by 19, but I don't see this as a bounce-back spot, man. It's a return home spot. They're playing a 4th game in 6 days, all in different cities, all across different time zones, one of them in elevation. This is a really bad spot for the Celtics, dude. You know, I talk about just in general the return home spot. When you've been gone for more than a week, it's bad. You have to get back to home life. You might not be paying attention, even though I know Brooklyn has been competitive against them this year. It's like, do you really pay that much attention to the Brooklyn Nets even still? I don't think so. So this is a really bad spot for the Celtics, dude. The home distractions coming into play, and on Sunday, they got an NBC and Peacock game against the 76ers, so that is a bigger game for the Celtics than this one is. So, there is an argument to be made that it's a little bit of a sandwich spot here, too. So I do not like the spot at all for the Celtics. Brooklyn was just in New York, so their travel spot is a lot better. They're just going from New York to Boston. They should show up for a game against the Celtics. Plus, Brooklyn's lost 6 games in a row now. But if you look at what they've done in their last few games, they look like they are still giving you an effort here. As they had an 11-point loss at Atlanta, a 9-point loss at home against Dallas. They did lose by 16 to San Antonio, but they're not getting absolutely erased in most of these games. So it looks like Brooklyn is trying, and I think this is the type of game where they will get up for it. I know they're on a back-to-back, so that's one concern here. They are actually playing let me see what this is, a 4th game in 6 days, just like the Celtics are, but the 2 middle ones were in New York, and this one is in Boston, so Brooklyn is not having to travel that much over these last few games. And yes, I know it's a back-to-back, but I think we're getting extra value on Brooklyn because it is a back-to-back here. Normally, I'm not going to play the back-to-back scenario, but I'm going to do it here. Celtics are 18, 17 and a half, whatever the number is. Hopefully it doesn't matter. It's a big number. 69% of tickets, 88% of the cash on the Celtics. I do not agree with that cash percentage there. We're going to fade the Celtics, man. Bad spot. The only caveat is that Brooklyn's on a back-to-back. And yes, because they're multiple games removed from the break now, it is definitely a true back-to-back here. But still, I expect an effort out of them, and it's a horrible spot for the Celtics. Knicks at Milwaukee. The Knicks are coming off a loss to Cleveland by double digits. They've had a couple of days off. I think the Knicks probably will show up here, even though they do have San Antonio on ABC next on Sunday. That's a big game for them. But the Knicks, yeah, they're coming off a big game against Cleveland, but with multiple days off after that and that being a double-digit loss, I think they'll give you an effort, and they probably see that Milwaukee's been playing really competitive recently, and Milwaukee just pulled off that upset against Cleveland after pulling off an upset against Miami. So, yeah, the one good thing about Milwaukee is they're playing hard. They're giving you an effort. Even without Giannis, they're not going away, Milwaukee. There's actually a chance they get into the play-in round of the playoffs still. So, yeah, Milwaukee does look like they're going to give you an effort here, but in this game, it's going to be really difficult for them to try to pull off 3 straight upsets in a row, man, here. Knicks with extra rest here and coming off a kind of an ugly loss. I think I would have to lay it with the Knicks if I was going to play this game. I'm not going to do it, but 66% of tickets, 72% of the cash on the Knicks. They're up from 8 to 8.5. That would be the way I would lean in that game. just based on, the scheduling dynamics of it. But Milwaukee has been impressive, but maybe the Knicks kind of noticed that and see, oh, this Milwaukee team, they're playing tough, so we have to take them seriously. Memphis at Dallas is not a great one. Memphis, of course, is playing basically with a MAAC unit. They lost to Sacramento, which is really bad, and then they lost to Golden State following that up. But maybe for Memphis, it's good to just forget about that. Just go on the road, leave home. You're not playing well, just go focus on basketball. Maybe you got to worry about Memphis tanking at this point. I don't think you have to worry about tanking as far as like the players on the court not giving you an effort, though. I think it's just that Memphis just doesn't have anybody in their lineup at this point. Like, everybody's been shut down, so that's kind of the tanking that exists in the NBA. Dallas, by the way, they just lost to Sacramento, too, last night. So Sacramento's on a little 2-game win streak, I think, there. That's a pretty bad loss. And Dallas was returning home from a road trip. It was almost a week-long road trip. Not exactly the greatest spot for Dallas there. I think I did lean to the Kings in that one. Dallas does have OKC on deck, so maybe they're looking ahead to that. They are on a back-to-back here. Both teams might show up because they're both off ugly losses. The money is coming in on the Grizzlies, and I don't really disagree with it. I think I probably would agree with that. Mavs down from 5.5 to 4.5 here. 52% of tickets and 99% of the cash on the Grizzlies. I'll agree with the Grizzlies in that one, but not a strong opinion. And then the second ESPN game is Denver at Oklahoma City. I believe this is still going to be Oklahoma City without SGA, or is he back now? Let me see. That is definitely something to know. Aaron Gordon is still out. He's slated to come back on March 1st for Denver. Jamal Murray is a game-time decision. I think he'll suit up if he can. He I guess, tried against the Celtics, but he left after 8 minutes, so I don't know what's going on. So we'll see if he actually plays. This is a big game, so I think he's going to try to play at the very least. Jalen Williams is still out for Oklahoma City, but it does look like SGA is back. Now, I got to see if he played in their last game or not, because sometimes I just don't even notice. He did not. So this is SGA's first game back. Now, that is a problem for Oklahoma City because, you know, I'm going to talk about it, the reverse injured player spot. When you're a star player, and we're talking about possibly the MVP of the league, SGA, even though I know Oklahoma City's so deep that they win games anyway without him. But I should have known based on the line, the fact that they're 8.5 at home against a really good team like Denver with Jokic playing. You got to think, yeah, that does tell you that SGA is back here. But anyway, Oklahoma City, yeah, they're like used to playing without SGA now. He's been out for almost a month. And when your star player, MVP caliber player has been out for a month and now he comes back, he might not be totally at 100% yet. You know, he's not used to being out there, you know, in an actual game. You have to readjust to what your roles are with him out there on the court. So sometimes you don't like gel right away. So this is a reverse injured player spot for Oklahoma City here. So I think that is a negative. And you might get a little bit of value in fading them because the line has to shift towards Oklahoma City. That's how it works. Denver is coming off a pretty big win over Boston. Going out on the road here. They're not going to overlook Oklahoma City, though, obviously. And Denver had 2 days off prior to the Celtic game. And then they were traveling prior to that. But they're not like a totally unrested team here. For OKC, they did just lose at Detroit. They're playing a third game in 4 days, though, all in different cities, and a fourth game in 6 days with travel between all the games. And they did just have a big game against Detroit, close game that they lost. So, you know, it's not really the greatest spot for OKC. The money's coming in on OKC, but I actually disagree with it. I would probably lean towards taking the points with the Nuggets. It's 50-50 on the tickets and 77% of the cash on the Thunder. I know the Thunder are really good at home. And tough to fade at home, but the reverse injured player spot I think really does kind of loom large in that game with SGA coming back. But that does mean it'll be good for ESPN and for the viewership because you'll get an actual Jokic SGA matchup in that one and a potential playoff preview in that game. So those are my thoughts on it. But I do lean to the Nuggets plus the points. That's going to do it, man. So my plays today are college basketball, George Washington minus the 3.5. Hockey, we're back in the hockey action now with the Utah Mammoth on the money line. And then we're taking the Brooklyn Nets plus the ton of points in the NBA. The other thing that helps that out, by the way, is the Celtics are a half-court style team. The Celtics, I know pacing doesn't matter as much in the NBA as it does in college. Like, you have less extremes in the NBA or fewer extremes, or the pacing mismatches are less extreme. But if you want to talk about it, the Celtics are the slowest paced team in the NBA. So there is that to consider, even though I know the Celtics have their fair share of blowout wins, of course, because they are really good. But it looks like a spot where you're not going to get the best effort out of the Celtics. So that's going to do it. Learn to Toad on Twitter. You can subscribe to me there, and that helps me out, man, with the support. Instagram, Learn to Toad there as well. I put out the short form content there. Like and subscribe to the channel here, man. Tell everybody, tell your friends, like Garrett and his guys here. Yeah, bring some more people over, man, so that I can yell at them in the comments section. Yell at the people that are in the comments section. Let's boost this thing up, man. We're on audio as well, Apple, Spotify. Check that out. Give me a good review there. Listen, that helps me out. Covered in Uke is my Uke channel on YouTube. You can check that out. I did upload my most recent cover there. Patreon.com/LearnToToad. You can throw me some support there. There's a Patreon feed for the Uke stuff there as well. That is updated except for the last cover that I just put up on YouTube. So I'm going to keep that up to date. I do requests there as well, though it's taken me a while to do it. And then Losercast, of course. How could I forget? The new comedy podcast that I'm on every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. That's going to do it, man. I'll figure out what I want to do with Saturday. I think the Saturday card is going to start shrinking a little bit because some of these conferences are finishing. I think the MAAC might not have any action on Saturday anymore, so that'll shrink the board a little bit on Saturday. But still going to be a huge board to have to deal with, so we're going to talk about that. I don't know if I'm going to do that show tonight or in the morning, but we'll figure it out. That's going to do it for now, guys. I appreciate it, everybody. Have a good one. Let's get some wins tonight. Back in action with the NHL finally. Feels good. Mark Claire, if you're out there, here's your first hockey play from me, of the rest of the season, let's say. That's going to do it. Peace, guys.